Joining us in studio to discuss this further is the Ekurhuleni MMC for Human Settlements, Lesiba Mpia. Lesiba, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Bonge, for inviting us.
Well, we've just seen, that package that obviously was put together by Sonti and talking about some really alarming, very concerning developments there. But urbanization is one problem that, Gauteng continues to grapple with. And, according to Stats SA, it's between 2016 and 2021, we are expecting that around 1 million people are going to be living in Gauteng. Are we then looking at a battle for services?
Look, we definitely are. If you look at the infrastructure that we have, is so overburdened. It's infrastructure that was built many years ago. So even before we start addressing the issue of migration, we have to start to address the issue of the backlog. And hence we welcome the intervention of the Premier, the Executive Mayor, for their program on rapid land release, because that simply means that the backlog that you have, you can have immediate interventions even before you can start speaking to the migration.
But do we have enough land?
Look, we don't.
So how then are you going to be rolling out this rapid land program?
Look, the future in terms of human settlements is densification. It's high rise, and that is mitigating on the scarcity of land. If you look at Ekurhuleni, it's built on a mining belt. So it's many services contesting for land. And hence we are saying that our future pipeline projects are definitely densification.
But then when you look into densification, don't we then run the risk of what is being done in Zandspruit, where you've got shacks that are being built high up, instead of shacks that are being built, as per normal? Isn't that then a disaster waiting to happen?
Look, that is a disaster. But if you look at the pipeline projects that we are going to be building, of course, they are going to be meeting the test of time in terms of compliances. But if you go into Zandspruit, of course, a shack that is a double story is definitely a disaster to happen. And we are calling upon, Zandspruit unfortunately is not in Ekurhuleni. We are calling upon the authorities there to take immediate action before there is a disaster. We don't have such in Ekurhuleni. Of course, we have a lot of people who are land seekers, a lot of people who are homeless, and who are migrating on a every day. As we speak today, there's a person who's moving from wherever they are to seek to move to Gauteng for a better life. And most unfortunately, people move towards Ekurhuleni because of its character of being highly industrialized. So we are mitigating against those particular challenges. But one of the things that we must never even begin to speak of is the influx control laws that were enacted by the erstwhile government. You know that it's a total violation of human rights. Any government of the day has got to have the relevant teeth of dealing with the challenges of its people.
So you don't agree with some of those that are suggesting that influx control could remedy the problem?
I definitely don't, because we live in a democratic state. Citizens who are in the country are empowered by the Constitution to have freedom of movement. And for us to enact those laws would be taking us aback.
And how do we then, because you talk about an issue that I've been a journalist for so many years, and it has been coming up time and time again, but there doesn't seem to be a resolve, if I can put it like that, to deal with it. The aging infrastructure.
Yes.
You started with that.
Yes.
Now, how do we then begin to even address that issue of aging infrastructure, because it continues to plague every government administration?
Yeah. Look, we have considered in Ekurhuleni we resolved on two things. Electrify informal settlements, all of them, because we believe that people who live in informal settlements also deserve dignity. So we have resolved on electrification of all informal settlements. But secondly, we have also resolved on making sure that we reblock all the informal settlements. That means that we space them out to allow freedom of movement of ambulances that come into the areas. But mostly is also to have an effective an effective plan, migration plan. We know the problems in Ekurhuleni, and we say that given sufficient resource and time, will definitely resolve the problems that are existing in informal settlements in Ekurhuleni.
And you talk about the issue of electrification of these informal settlements. I was in Wadville not so long ago, and residents in another informal settlement are complaining about the fact that there's plans to bring electricity, but we've just passed World Toilet Day. There are no plans to make sure that there's proper sanitation. So while we move to give, residents electricity, what then becomes of the sanitation?
Well, there definitely are plans. The migration plan speaks to that. It speaks to the fact that are we in a position as a city to develop where residents are residing, or do we have an alternative? And in most instances, we do have an alternative. Hence, we say that our migration plan is effective in many areas. For instance, in Winnie Mandela, we have realigned 595 structures. We've electrified 1,200, and we can quantify. We've done a lot of electrification. We have not only electrified one informal settlements. And of course, in certain instances, we are a victim of our own successes, because simply put, when residents are looking at their neighbors having had electrified, they become impatient. And those are part of the stakeholder relations that we're having with different informal settlements. And we can say now that without fail, every weekend we are in an informal settlement in Ekurhuleni.
And don't you think that the residents have got a right to be disgruntled and to be impatient, because they have been waiting for over 20 years?
Yes, of course, we do agree. But we say without fear of contradiction that we have a plan in place. We are just appealing to our communities to give us the time to actually roll out the services that we have.
And how long do you need to roll out the complete plan?
We have an MTREF period. The migration plan, we have set aside 660 million for the MTREF period. We are going to be we are in existence for the next 5 years as a coalition government, of course, and we run a very pro-efficient coalition government. But we say that we have MTREF plans, we have budget to the effect, we have a 5-year plan, and we also have budgets to the effect. And those also have their own deliverables.
And so when we talk about these millions that you're saying are being set aside, as a resident of Ekurhuleni, for example, I'm in an informal settlement, for example, how much time are you asking me to give the government before they actually deliver on the services? Or are they going to continue with their song that they're saying people only get services closer to an election?
No, not at all. We have gone to IDP programs. Informal settlements know their schedules. And we've gone to informal settlements and had necessarily difficult discussions to say it's 2017, just making an example, your program is coming in 2020. But at least they know. They know that there are projections, there are schedules. And we tell them that in the interim, we are going to be providing you with basic services. And we can safely say that there's no single informal settlement in Ekurhuleni that is underserviced.
What is underserviced?
There are interim basic services such as your chemical toilets. Those are interim interventions, such as the waste collections. There are some that we have already electrified, and we do say that those are basic services that we believe can make life habitable for our communities.
And, just before we wrap up this discussion, when it comes to the issue of, the rapid land release program, what are some of the challenges that, obviously you as the MMC, you are in the cold face of all of this. What are some of the challenges that you are experiencing when it comes to actually rolling this program out as soon as government would like to roll it out?
Look, we want to put it unequivocal that we are a government of the people, by the people. We are a pro-poor government, but we are also a government demarcated in Ekurhuleni, right? When we pronounce these interventions for Ekurhuleni residents, they then start to attract attention from elsewhere. And you know that the process of your rapid land release have got to, we are vetting people, juxtaposing them against a vetting process, making sure that they qualify, doing certain verifications. But we find that there are instances where people coming as far as KZN and Eastern Cape come and exploit this opportunity that we have for Ekurhuleni citizens.
And how are you going to deal with that?
No, we have a biometric system that is able to pick up Ekurhuleni residents from their previous registration. It's quite difficult because look, it's your national housing registrations, but as much as we are saying that we are juggling against intervening on the people's plight, it's quite difficult when we have to come forth and say that surely we want to request that this remains a program for Ekurhuleni-based residents. But we are saying our systems are in place to make sure that such issues are mitigated upon.
Thank you so much for that. I wish we had more time because it does look like this is an issue that is going to continue well even beyond the election. That was Ekurhuleni MMC for Human Settlements, Lesiba Mpia.